Hey everyone, this is Dan. I'm talking to you today about social media and international politics. Communication crosses borders. It does. You can get on the internet, you can look at things in another country, and this could be great for public diplomacy. People can understand each other more. You can have greater resolution of animosities. You can have journalism that works across borders. A journalist in another country might understand your country better than you do. There's a sort of famous sort of quip where it's like, if you want to know what's happening in the United States, read the Soviet papers. If you want to know what's happening in the Soviet Union, read the United States papers. Hacking and propaganda, though, are real. There are people internationally who are seeking to make money, who are seeking to make people change their business behaviors, who are seeking just to generally cause chaos by using the channels of international communication. There's a lot of economic integration and democratic integration that's happened. It means countries and economies coming together. But now we are seeing increasing democratic deconsolidation. We're seeing things break up. We're seeing people decide against communicating with each other. And increasingly, we're seeing countries reassert themselves as the dominant model of organization in our world. There was this idea called the Arab Spring, and it happened around 2010. And what happened was there were a lot of conflicts that had been boiling for decades that reached their culminating points at the same time. So you had the government of Egypt fall apart. You had the end of, or the change in the Libyan civil war, and a number of others. The most successful of these revolutions was in Tunisia, where information from WikiLeaks helped the people know they could rise up against the government. The outcomes in many other countries were less than stellar. And the farther we get out from that moment, the more it looks like these revolutions, these pressures on these governments may have actually backfired, that we have less democracy than we did before. There's a really important factor in looking back at these old stories of the Arab Spring, that there was a transformation in journalism and international politics at the same time. And a lot of people wrote articles at the time attributing major changes in countries to changes in communication. And a lot of those stories were less than true. And I think that matters. So let's talk about how governments change. So first and foremost, there have to be groups of people with strong ties who will take direct action. And so when we talk about, say, people changing or fighting for civil rights, strong ties means you go get on a bus and go down and join the voter registration effort in Alabama. Right? It's very different than being like, oh, well, I read this in a paper and I'll tell my friend about it in upstate New York. That's not how that works. So you have to have people who are very strongly tied together who will take very great physical risks to engage in change in the current change of government. That's not retweeting. Another major factor, you have to have military units defect against the government. And this was one of the major factors that started around 2008 in the Libyan situation, was that the control and consolidation of the military began to decay. And once that happens, the actual change in government is far more likely. There also have to be issues affecting entire populations. In the Egyptian example, there were spikes in world food prices that made it very difficult for the government to maintain its legitimacy. I think Manuel de Landa does a fine job of distinguishing between symbolic and practical legitimation, and that if a government cannot provide enough food or physical security for its people, it doesn't matter how wonderfully that government talks, it loses legitimacy. These are all very physical phenomena. These are not people getting on the web and seeing a meme. These are people saying, I'm hungry, I'm willing to be shot, I am willing to take the risk of being thrown in jail or being sprayed with poisonous chemicals. So there's no magic phrase that causes people to be willing to take those risks. Those risks are bigger than some piece of technology or that a few people in your country. In the case of some of these platforms and countries, we're literally talking dozens of people on the platform. Those were not the causes of these people being willing to come together. Now, did it cause a transformation in the coverage of these stories in the West? Yes. Whether or not that helped them is a different matter. Now, beyond the story of the Arab Spring, there's a new story happening, and it's about the rise of data sovereignty. Dozens of countries have passed data sovereignty laws, which means the era of the open internet is ending. So there was this idea among Silicon Valley utopianists that the internet would displace countries. I mean, Facebook wrote about it in financial documents, that they thought they could transform the world's governments. And the case is that it's just not true. And so what data sovereignty laws say is that if you want to operate a company in one of these countries, you have to get a server there and keep all your data in the country and, frankly, allow the government to onto your server. Yeah, that's sad. This was caused by a combination of a loss of trust in the current allocation of power, meaning that people weren't willing to trust American corporations anymore, and more countries wanted more power. So we have this sort of colonialist idea that third world governments are incompetent, that they're not a part of the large sort of first world apparatus, that they don't know what's going on, that they're not technically skilled, and this is simply false. These governments are effective, they are well educated, and they are far more capable than anyone would think. In many cases, American firms are ceding to the requests of foreign governments. And so, no, the internet was not stronger than the state system. We are building data centers all over the world. VPN access to some countries is about to be curtailed. It's a problem. Cyber war has already begun. A number of first shots were fired by different countries, including Stuxnet, which was a centrifuge attacking virus. In short, we have people using the open internet to launch attacks against people, corporations, governments all over the world. And we have increasingly we have governments locking down their internets and ramping up security. So in short, the state system is now controlling the internet, and it will only control the internet more. Conclusion, the internet is not magic. It is a system of wires connected to computers that can do some pretty cool stuff. But at the end of the day, it's wires. And in this grand game of rock, paper, scissors, the scissors cuts the fiber optic cord, and there's nothing to stop the scissors except a rock. And if there's no government or military there to throw that rock, you've got nothing. Scissors just beats fiber optic cord. Morozov, in his wonderful base of research, has been quite clear that internet access may actually have helped repressive governments more than it hindered them. That people trying to organize, trying to reach out to the Western press actually made themselves further into targets. And that really effective organizing on the base level is much more important, and even staying off the internet could be more effective for activists than becoming very loud on the internet. Most importantly, history never ends. The factors that have caused governments to change, that motivate people to take risks of life or death for their freedom, are really important, and they will continue. There is no piece of technology, there's no app, there's no button that's more important than those people and the affective bonds they have with their fellows. So what I would say about social media and foreign policy is it's a bigger story than just looking at the ways one might use Twitter or whatever else for public diplomacy today. But we are looking at the very real logistical power of the internet becoming part and parcel of future conflicts. And to say cyber war is the future is a bit of a misnomer, is that it's beginning now. You know, people are already, the viruses are here, the hacking is here, and it's only going to get worse.